It's an election year. Just send the nuke and finish this off already. The Kate Daly Show starts now.
What if the Constitution no longer applied? What if the government could write any law, regulate any behavior, and tax any event? What if you could love your country, but hate what the government has done to it? What if Jefferson was right? What if that government is best which governs least? What if freedom's greatest hour of danger is now?
You're listening to The Kate Daly Show, katedalyradio.com, over 26 million on podcast. There's a reason for that. It's because, we say the things people won't say. So I welcome you. Of course, last hour on a Monday, Dr. Pesto will join me later on in the week. And I really, really appreciate it. I got a special guest. And so that's why that's why Dr. Pesto will be joining us later on in the week. I have attorney Ron Berruti with me, and I want to hear so much of what you have to say, Ron. Welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Kate. I appreciate it.
You bet. You're licensed to practice in federal and state courts in New Jersey, New York, and Kentucky. Also works with local counsel in other states in complex litigation matters. Among the types of litigation that Ron handles are disputes involving constitutional law and civil rights. I could go on and on. And I want to get sort of the where do we stand, and especially with what's been filed with the Supreme Court on it's Judge Juan Merchan on the Trump case. And can you please, if somebody has been living in a cave for the last year, can you please describe, because we have 4 cases going on, can you please describe this particular case?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So this particular case was the one case where President Trump so far stood trial in a criminal matter and was convicted of felonies. He was convicted, I think, of 34 felonies where it was alleged that he had paid Stormy Daniels off and tried to, I guess they call it hush money, to influence the 2016 election. The case was presided over by Judge Juan Merchan. Judge Merchan, we allege, is highly conflicted, should not have been the trial judge, and gagged President Trump, if not purposely, but with the effect of causing the conflicts that he had not to be known to the general public in a significant way.
Okay. All right.
So
you go ahead, please.
Yeah. So we filed on behalf of my client, a media company, Good Logic LLC, which has a podcast, a legal podcast, filed a request in a petition in the appellate court in New York, which has jurisdiction over Judge Merchan. We sued Judge Merchan directly, saying that the gag order was illegal, it violated our client's freedom of the press, also violated President Trump's First Amendment right and right to a fair trial. The court basically tried to keep that a secret and rejected our application the same day President Trump got convicted. We filed with the New York Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, saying they got it wrong. In the appellate court, New York Court of Appeals said, you don't have a case. And now we have petitioned the United States Supreme Court for an emergency stay of a gag order that was imposed against President Trump with the idea of silencing him from speaking about Judge Merchan's family, which caused Judge Merchan to have a conflict of interest.
What has been most misunderstood about this, especially when you get to mainstream media and what they put out?
Well, the details of the case were rather salacious. They really were obviously, it seems to me, designed to make President Trump look like a horrible person, make him, and to try to find a way to convict him so that he could be called a felon. But let's just say everything was above board and everything made sense. Even if that was the case, Judge Merchan, it's very, very few people know, and they don't know because President Trump was gagged, that Judge Merchan had 2 family members who were stood to gain financially or otherwise from his being the trial judge. One being Judge Merchan's daughter, who is, I think, a media consultant for what was at the time the Biden-Harris campaign.
Yes.
And reports indicate that in the same quarter the year before, Judge Merchan sat as trial judge over President Trump. Her company made $12 million less. In other words, there was $12 million in extra profits the quarter that Judge Merchan sat in trial of President Trump. So it's just facially appears to be that there's an economic interest there. The other one is that Judge Merchan's wife works for Letitia James. Letitia James is the New York Attorney General. She campaigned for that position on the promise to get Trump. And in fact, there are video clips of her running for office, yelling into a bullhorn about President Trump, lock him up, lock him up. Mm-hmm. So that's Judge Merchan's wife's boss. So obviously there are people very close to Judge Merchan who have very significant interest in the outcome of the case. And under New York law, mm-hmm. if a judge is within 6 degrees of separation of someone with a significant financial or other interest in the outcome of a case, he cannot sit as the trial judge. Here we have 1 degree. We have the daughter and the wife.
So why is this not a case then? If he's violating New York law, why is that not a case that has been brought forward then?
Well, we brought the case forward.
Okay.
It was during the Trump trial, mm-hmm. and one would have been hard pressed to even know that we had a case because
right.
the New York Appellate Division basically kept our case confidential, even though it had no basis to do so. One could not go to the New York Court of Appeals or the New York First Department mm-hmm. Appellate Court and said, "I want to see the documents on Good Logic versus Juan Merchan," because it was basically under seal. No one even knew it existed. Jeez. And they waited until the conviction to rule against us. So there was never any opportunity for the public to get any knowledge about our case. And the case before the Court of Appeals, the highest court in New York, we took an appeal to the Court of Appeals. Court of Appeals said that there was not a serious interest of New York constitutional law at stake, which, it's hard to fathom because the New York First Amendment, equivalent of the First Amendment, offers broader protection for people than does the U.S. First Amendment. So they threw it out. So only now are we getting into the realm where maybe the public will find out about our case, and that's mm-hmm. what we're doing here with you today, among other places.
Oh, I hope so. And what's happening with this filing with SCOTUS?
So the Supreme Court has eight associate justices and 1 chief justice. There are 13 appellate circuits within the federal court system. So the Supreme Court, beneath that are these 13 Circuit Court of Appeals, and beneath that are all the trial courts. Right. The Second Circuit Court of Appeal, when you have a constitutional issue in state court, and the state court you've exhausted all your state court remedies, if it's a federal constitutional issue, you can now appeal to the Supreme Court. Mm-hmm. And given that this is an emergency, the justice who is in charge of New York, from the justice from the U.S. Supreme Court, who's in charge of New York, gets to hear the petition, and that is Justice Sonia Sotomayor. Mm-hmm. So we have filed our motion with Justice Sotomayor, seeking to have her set aside the gag order because it violates our client's First Amendment rights to the free press. It violates the public's right to know, to hear from President Trump. It violates President Trump's First Amendment rights to speak about the conflict. And it also violated his right to a fair trial because we allege that there was a trial where the sitting judge was conflicted, and therefore the convictions would have to be thrown out mm-hmm. automatically since he shouldn't have been the judge on the case.
Was this I find it rather shocking that you have a story that came out in 2016, even before that, right? And they've been trying to get this story to stick about Trump and Stormy Daniels. I actually don't believe it. I think it was all conjured up from the beginning. And were you amazed to see it resurface in this last while for this particular election? Were you shocked about that? Surprised?
Well, look, there's really nothing that should be shocking anymore.
Yeah,
it's it's hard to really wrap your head around what's been happening in our country, mm-hmm. And how the legal system seems to be have been weaponized. Mm-hmm. And here again, Stormy Daniels had signed an affidavit saying that she never had an affair with President Trump. Mm-hmm. Et cetera. And yet somehow or other, by paying, like as people do all the time, clients do it all the time. You pay a settlement just to end a case because you don't want to spend the time, you don't want the publicity, whatever it is. You just pay a settlement, you enter into a confidentiality order. It happens all the time. And that's what President Trump did here. There was a confidentiality, there was a payment made to Stormy Daniels, and she had sued him. And then she came out and said, this never really happened. So they turned around and they indicted him in 2023 on the ground that this payment was really a way to try to avoid publicity so that he could adversely influence the 2016 presidential election in his favor. I mean, just a total
sham. I mean,
total crock, really, is what it was. But he got convicted in New York on 34 counts of doing that, and it's just felonies. And theoretically, he could go to jail for the rest of his natural life.
Right.
And it's just an outrage. But let's put that aside. My case isn't about that outrage. My case is about the simpler outrage that the sitting judge was conflicted, and he gagged a criminal defendant for the purpose of keeping him quiet. Criminal defendants do not get gagged for the purpose of keeping them quiet. Anytime there's a gag order in place, it's got to be under extremely urgent circumstances where there is a clear and present danger that the trial will be immediately infected. And never before President Trump's case, actually there are two cases. There's a federal case in Washington, D.C., where he's being charged by a federal, in a federal indictment with Jack Smith, that there's a gag order. And then in this case in New York, there was a gag order against him, which was based upon the D.C. gag order. Before that, you can't find a case where the criminal defendant was gagged to make it easy on the prosecution to put in a case without having to deal with the adverse publicity. In fact, there is one case where that happened. It was against Congressman Harold Ford. One of the federal courts of appeals says you cannot enter a gag order in this situation. It is gag orders are meant to protect the criminal defendant, that if it's inconvenient for there to be publicity for the trial judge or for the prosecutor, too bad. It's the prosecutor's burden of proof. It's the criminal defendant's right to a fair trial, to be treated as if he's innocent until proven guilty. And you can't just gag the person to make it easy for you to convict him.
We'll be right back.
But they didn't do that with President Trump.
A little bit more with Attorney Ron Berruti. Be right back. Don't miss this. Unbelievable, right? Be right back. Kate Daly Show. All right. Hold on just one moment.
Am I going on too long?